mean, I don't believe in suicide. They're regrettable accidents, but they are calls for help. And there are people who they're tired of it all, and they just make a mistake. You get an old man that I took out the water, and we identified him by numbers on his shoulder. And he had got these numbers as a 14-year-old boy in Auschwitz. Now think what he went through, the life he had. And to leave all that behind him, come over to Glasgow. And then, after such tragedy, life became that he didn't want to live anymore. You've got to treat them with the greatest respect.
To recover a dead body in order to relieve the minds of the relatives, or to enter the river knowing the dangers, takes a person with a kind of bravery and dedication that I am sure few generations have had the privilege of having among them. George Parsonage wrote these words about his father after his death, but equally they could apply to himself. Like his father before him, George has dedicated his entire life to the work of the Glasgow Humane Society.
The Glasgow Humane Society was set up in 1790 by a group of Glasgow merchants. If someone was trying to drown himself in those days, you were thought as a criminal if you took your own life, and you were really an accessory after the fact if you went to assist, and people thought this was wrong. And all over the world they were setting up humane societies with the idea of helping people, but it was only the Glasgow Humane Society that actually set up a full-time officer.
Operating from Glasgow Green, the Glasgow Humane Society is the oldest life-saving organisation in the world. Since 1859, the society has remained in the hands of only two families, the Parsonage family and the Geddes before them, all living and working from the house on the banks of the River Clyde. As the sole officer of a society which patrols all of Glasgow's waterways, George is on call 24 hours a day, rarely leaving the side of the river. George today still answers emergency calls in conjunction with the police. Working with his father from a young age, he had hands-on experience of cooperating in search and recovery. The Humane Society's traditional methods and an immense amount of knowledge were passed from father to son over the years.
Father kept all the family as far removed from his work as he could. But I mean, even since you were very young, you realised it was quite different. There were police officers and CID around the house all the time, ambulance crews arriving and things. He would, when he had a recovery or a rescue near the boat shed here, if we were down there, just playing around the boat shed, he would lock us up in the shed to keep us out of harm's road, By the early age of 14, because I became a pretty good rower and that, and better than most people he could get, he started using me to help him in his cases, and it was quite young, but I mean, it's not that long since people the age of 10 were down the mines or up chimneys, First time he took me out, there had been an accident in the county, as we called it, in Lanarkshire, and it was at Bothwell where children had been drowned playing in the raft, and I do remember that journey out and father recovering the body. There was a mixture of the sadness of seeing a body and the pride that you felt that your father could do something like this. It was quite remarkable to see him in action, They say that in the day he was born there was a big flood on the river. There certainly was a big flood the day he died. And, the cortege came up the south carriageway, the green, along the river bank where people were standing and the crowds were out, although it was heavy, heavy rain. When they put the coffin down into the grave was filled with water and the coffin floated, and I think that was the first time I'd smiled for days, Very fitting, yeah. About lunchtime the day he died, police officers who didn't even know my father had died phoned up. They were wanting a search made downriver, something to do with some murder hunt that was going on, and automatically I just slipped away and went on with the work.
Since that time, George has rescued over 1,000 people.
The biggest worry about a rescue can be, are you actually going to make it in time? I mean, I've never seen anybody drown, and I don't want to see anybody drown. That's one of my nightmares. I never want to see it happen. But boy, the adrenaline's running and you are a bit scared.
When you see so much sorrow and heartbreak from what happens in the river, when you see the state that things that are in the river a long time can get into, it makes you grateful and that it's not you, and it makes you grateful that you've recovered a body quickly. You know, it's just, I mean, it's a human being, okay. The spirit, whatever the religion is, the spirit has left. It's just a body now. But they had a life, they had a wonderful life. Whether they were young and they'll never grow old, whether they were old and the thousands of memories. I don't know. I mean, people say to me you get more upset when you take the body of a child out. Yes, it's heartbreaking to take the body of a child out, but I've always said it's equally heartbreaking to take the body of an adult out.
In 2001, George rescued 14 people who had fallen into the river. On a sadder note, he also recovered the bodies of 15 who had lost out to the cold and the currents of Glasgow's waters. One of those 15 was my brother Gerard. He was with his fiancée Sarah Jane. They'd had a night out, just one of the clubs nearby, and they'd left to come home. I'm guessing they went by the bandstand because obviously Gerard being a musician and this kind of thing, he's probably standing on it having a song. I don't know what he was doing, why he was doing it, but he was messing around on the ledge. I mean, I'm not really that clear on what happened that night because I've never really... I don't think I want to know the details. I don't think I have to know the details. It's kind of bad enough the images you can conjure up without knowing the full facts. Every day from the morning you were waking up wondering if the divers were out. You were hearing helicopters and thinking, is that linked to it? You were, just wondering. I mean, every day we came down here and we were doing our own search, walking up and down the river. 2 weeks after it happened, we were down again at the river and I got a call to go home. I mean, and every day you thought, today's going to be the day, today's going to be the day. And what is it? And no, just come home. And, in that car journey, you're just thinking, have they found him? And you're thinking, is it good that they found him? Is it bad? Have they got some news? But in fact, when we got home, it was a phone call to say that the police divers were calling off their search, and we had to then maybe start to think about never having the body recovered. George recovered his body the following Saturday, which was 3 weeks after it happened, the 28th of April, which was one of the nicest days in April actually. The weather was really nice and we'd been in town. This one day we decided we were going to leave the house and we were all going to go out for a curry because we hadn't left the house